Hi, I'm Samantha Campbell from Project Dragonfly's Global Field Program, and I thought just for the sake of novelty, I would try presenting this assignment in the form of a video rather than a writing. So I will begin with a quote from our Peacemaker assignment from David Orr, who wrote, "The plain fact is that the planet does not need more successful people, but it does need more peacemakers, healers, restorers, storytellers, and lovers of every kind. It needs people who will live well in their places. It needs people of moral courage willing to join the fight to make the world habitable and humane. And these qualities have little to do with success as we have defined it." So we can't manage our environment like we think we can. We really can only manage ourselves. That's one of his ideas that he explained in his writing. And as a teacher, I feel like I have the opportunity to kind of sit back and observe every day when like 400 people decide to come to the same place and be together all day. And I'm always sometimes in awe of humanity's ability to constantly organize such large social institutions. Especially because it seems through observation, watching children, that human nature is such that we naturally resist being managed. And yet, we are such social beings that we still want to do everything together, even though we can't agree about anything. So sometimes I just do feel amazed at how much society has accomplished, despite all of our feelings. And I've noticed already that in this short time, this course has improved my communication skills. So although my opinions and my viewpoints haven't changed, I find myself better able to express my thoughts in ways that is more palatable and clear. And I've also become better at arguing my opinion. So I've gotten better at arguing with my husband. I've heard people say things like, my wife's a lawyer, so she's really good at arguing. And, we'll all laugh. But now I think, yeah, you can train yourself to be better at arguing and expressing your thoughts better. And that's what this course has really helped me with. I think maybe it's because we're constantly using the scientific writing format, which has to be backed up by cited evidence or proof that somebody else agrees with you and that person has credentials. So now I'm more likely to cite my arguments, to give proof or examples of other people that have looked into this, and I'm also more likely to demand evidence and sources from other people when they're giving their opinion. Another effect this course has had on me is that I applied for a grant from the South Carolina Native Plant Society to try to get some much needed items for our school gardening program. And it's funny because I've been saying for like 3 years that I really want to apply for a grant, and I just didn't really have the time in my schedule. And then at some point, after writing like 3 papers a week, and reading 9 scientific articles a week, I thought, well, if I can do this, then certainly writing a grant can't be any harder than any of these assignments. So I just sat down and wrote a grant in like 2 days. I mean, I didn't work the whole 2 days, but I started at night and finished the next afternoon. So I'll let you know how that goes. But I guess what I'm saying is I'm less intimidated to do things than I was before. Another thing I really like about being a graduate student is I've used it as an excuse to just send emails to interesting people doing cool things and just say, I'm a graduate student and I'm researching X, and what do you think about this? It's like an excuse to contact interesting people, and you've got a project behind you to sort of initiate that communication. And so it's definitely opened me up in that way. I feel, more capable and more connected to my community, especially just meeting people from across the world. But did what we do save even one tree or protect even one creature that lives in the sacred groves? Probably not. I've monitored 165 milkweed plants, and counted every invertebrate that's located on them. Has that helped monarchs? Maybe, because I can submit that research to citizen science program that is used by real scientists to write papers and to affect policy. So that's exciting. I've also explored environmental justice issues in the CSC class and identified some in my community. I've shied away less from uncomfortable and awkward conversations with my relatives and neighbors. Did this cause them to change their opinions or solve any of these environmental justice issues? Probably not. But we're going to keep trying. So I'm not sure if my master plan will have anything to do with monarchs or milkweeds, but it will involve plants. So I've really been trying to use native plants as the ribbon that will tie all of my projects together at the end of this. And I think this is a prudent strategy because I'm a gardening teacher by profession, and even though I could easily be talked into following any interest, like I could go determine what kinds of seashells are washing up on the shores during what time of year, like I would love to do that, but I really want to integrate my coursework to my career as much as possible. So I am trying to focus on plants, and I also want to find a way for that knowledge of plants to benefit my school, because my administration has been really supportive of me getting my graduate degree, and so I want it to also benefit them in some way, because let's face it, the hours we put into doing the work that we're doing, getting our graduate degree, have to come away from somewhere else. Like I would be helping my husband more with his projects or working in the garden more, because anyone that works in a school, as most of you do, doesn't just work the hours they get paid for. So it's a lot of hours, and I want it to have tangible results for my employer, for my family at the end. So I am trying to focus on native plants, and also what I've learned is I want to discover how native plants can affect my larger community, not just the school, but how can I find other organizations in my community that are also interested in native plants? What are they doing? How are they doing it? Could they be partners that could help our school? Could our school, be partners that could help them? So I like how the community science or conservation science and community course has expanded my IAP into not just asking, questions about monarchs and milkweeds, but asking deeper questions like, how do monarchs and milkweeds affect my community, and who in my community knows about this, and how could this knowledge contribute back to my community? So the goal is at the end that I have some kind of knowledge that I can give that knowledge back. And so I've chosen my community to be specifically local gardeners who are trying to create habitat here in Beaufort. So that answers the question of, did you find connections between your summer term and your fall term? The next question, what do you know about your local communities that you did not know before, and what do you still have to learn? This is a hard question because although I'm not a fast learner, once I finally do grasp a concept, I tend to then think it's like obvious and forget that I didn't know it at one time. So I try to always keep that in the back of my mind when I'm teaching and also when I'm learning to be more easy on myself. That if I just keep at it and keep exposing myself to difficult subjects and don't give up, that the learning will occur. Um, so I don't know if I know a whole lot more about my community now than I did before, but I do feel like I have a different approach to my community. Like I'm more able to interact and listen and question those and approach problems and search out people and resources that can help me, and then also think about what I can offer in return. The next question is, which local, national, or global issues do you want to know more about so you can affect change? Mainly, I want to learn everything I can about landscape restoration techniques and ways to find funding and locations for such projects. So, one thing I love about planting trees, wildflowers, and other native plants is that despite the immensity and the overwhelmingness of our environmental problems, planting a plant is something that anyone can do. It's a concrete action that anyone can take. And even just one bush put in the ground will then immediately be visited by birds and butterflies and lizards and all kinds of creatures. And so you have immediate feedback on the action you've taken. So I really want to focus on that aspect of conservation, sort of habitat restoration, because even though I'm in the field of education, my problem with education is that it relies too heavily on the belief that if you teach someone about something, then they'll take action. And I just don't think that's the case. So, you know, when people do take action after they've learned something, a lot of times that action is educating others. So we're just educating ourselves and each other constantly, but we're not actually doing anything very often about the problems. We're just learning about them, which is important because you don't want to be misinformed when you take actions. That can be dangerous. Um, but I just would like to put my efforts towards really, putting some plants in the ground because I've had even several adults tell me that I've changed the way they look at nature, I've changed the way they feel about nature. Um, but does changing the way they feel about nature change their lifestyle? Usually not. I mean, they're still buying single use plastic water bottles, they're still using Ziploc bags, they're still having lots of babies, and it's like changing the way you feel about something doesn't actually have any effect on the problem. So, like, we can't love the earth, like, back to health. We have to actually do something about it. Um, Therefore, I would rather plant, one tree than educate 1,000 people about climate change. And I think that kind of relates to the statement that Orr made, David Orr, in his writing, Thinking About Earth, that ignorance is not really a problem that can be solved. Ignorance is a human condition. So every time we gain new knowledge, we also gain new ignorance of not knowing the effects of what will happen when we apply that knowledge. How do you now, and how will you continue to enact positive environmental and social change in the future, both personally and professionally? I can only answer that, um, you know, all I can do is just keep not giving up and keep not giving in to the pressure to just fit in, to just go with the flow. For those of you that are younger and taking this course, I think it's important to know that, like, choosing the path of becoming like a conservation biologist, it's not an easy path. Like, you're gonna ruffle some feathers, and basically this course is like teaching us how to rock the boat, and there's going to be people that aren't going to appreciate having their boat rocked. And I don't say that to discourage you, but I say that to prepare you so you'll be more equipped, to weather the storms. I don't know if anyone ever prepared me. I mean, they all said, oh, there's no money in environmental science, but I didn't care because I wasn't interested in a big house or a fancy car. But I didn't realize that this meant that I wouldn't even be able to buy a house, and that, all my jobs in conservation would be volunteer, unpaid, and I would just be doing things on the side to get by, So you really need to be like ready to fight this fight and be really passionate about what you're doing, once you decide to go into this field. I thought it was interesting in Orr's writing how he said, we let kids learn on their own, that, once they get into the real world, that, all these ideals we taught them in school are just sort of tossed to the side in honor of the bottom line. And this just encourages, despair and a feeling of powerlessness. And we try to protect kids from the ugly realities of life. But, I'd rather we prepare them more, so that we can, have a plan. I mean, it's not easy. At my school, I work at a Montessori school, and I've witnessed some, brave conversations that teachers have had with young elementary kids, about the Holocaust, about school shootings, about climate change. It's really hard to talk about this stuff, especially with children. But and I honor the people and respect the people who do. I do, though, kind of hate how it's usually followed by, something in vein of Maria Montessori's teachings, where it's like, the fate of the future lies in the hands of the children, So we're basically telling children that we've been, incapable of preventing, inhumanity, and we haven't, made efforts to protect the resources for their future, but we still have hope because we think that they're gonna, that they can solve the problem. So that's a lot of pressure, to put on children, to say like children are going to be the future, they're going to change everything. Like, we need to walk the walk and, show them that we're trying, that we care, so that they can have hope. And the only way I know how to do that is just to live by example, and let the kids know, like, I'm not depending on them to fix the world, but I'm going to do everything I can to make it worth saving. And, that might not mean that I end up having like any effect on policy or anything like that, but it could just mean, living the life, a simple life, and just showing them, being an example of how to live simply, to live with less, to need less, to demand less, to take less, to fear less, to manage and control less, and just encourage more being and more observing, more questioning, and more appreciation. And maybe that's how, teaching people to love nature does actually change the world, because essentially what we're doing is we're teaching them how to use their love of nature, to restore themselves, so they're using nature and our natural resources not just to survive, but they're tapping into its replenishing, qualities, so that they can keep fighting the fight. So that's it for the questions. That was, as usual, a deep reading. I was going to draw a picture. I thought, oh, we can draw a picture. That will be perfect. And then after I read the article, the only picture I could imagine in my mind was like humanity, like being a fetus, like in the womb of the earth. And then we're just like busy, 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 just working so hard, like just tapping away at the umbilical cord, like just trying to disconnect it. Like, and then I thought nobody wants to see that drawing. And so I made a video. But maybe the drawing would have been better than the video. I don't know, but thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on.